To help us better understand our story today, we are going to talk about something that we already know about, the water cycle. We know that water moves in a cycle going from lakes to rivers to oceans to the atmosphere and then to land. The first part of the water cycle is evaporation. This is when the sun heats up the earth and turns water in rivers, lakes, and oceans into a gas called vapor. Plants and trees also lose water in evaporation, but they lose it through their leaves. This is called transpiration. The next part of the water cycle is condensation. This is when water vapor rises into the sky and turns back into a liquid, forming clouds. The next part of the water cycle is precipitation. This is when too much water is in our clouds and water droplets fall back down to the earth. This can be as rain, snow, hail, or sleet. The last part of the water cycle is collection. This is when precipitation collects in bodies of water such as rivers, lakes, and oceans. This is where it will eventually be evaporated again back into the air, and the cycle will start all over again. Now that we have reviewed the parts of our water cycle, we are going to talk about important vocabulary words that will help us understand our story. Solid. Solids are objects that hold their shapes like bricks or coins. Liquid. Liquids are particles that move around and they determine their shape based on their container, like milk or orange juice. Gas. Gas has no size or shape, and it moves around freely like the air we breathe. Evaporation. Evaporation is when a liquid changes into a gas. Vapor. Vapor is a lot of small droplets of water that fly into the air when water is heated. Transpiration. Transpiration is when plants give off water vapor through their leaves. Condensation. Condensation is when water vapor turns into liquid. Sleet. Sleet is liquid water that freezes before it hits the ground like rain, that turns into ice before hitting the ground. Hail. Hail is small lumps of ice that fall from clouds during precipitation. Surface runoff. Surface runoff is when rain hits the land or when the snow melts and it goes downhill into rivers, lakes, and oceans, or it soaks into the ground and becomes groundwater. Meteorologist. A meteorologist is a scientist that studies the Earth's atmosphere and helps people understand the Earth's weather. Atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere is a jacket of gases that surrounds our planet. It keeps us warm and gives us oxygen to breathe, and it is where our weather happens. Our story starts with a young boy named Parker. Parker is a 7-year-old boy who is on a walk with his mom after a rainstorm. He is looking at a puddle and he is wondering what happens to the puddle after a few days. Parker remembered that in his first grade class he learned about the water cycle, so he is excited to watch that puddle to see what happens. That got Parker thinking more about what he learned about the water cycle. He thought that if the puddle was caused by precipitation and the puddle would eventually heat up from the sun, then that means that it will eventually evaporate too and disappear. Well, that had Parker thinking. He knows that all of our water on Earth goes through a cycle, but he is wondering how long does it take for that cycle to happen? So Parker asked his mom while they were on their walk, "Mom, how long does it take for water to go through the water cycle?" Parker's mom smiled and said, "That's a good question, Parker, and I am not sure. Maybe we should take a trip to see a meteorologist and maybe they can answer your question." So Parker and his mom walked home and got in their car and drove to meet their local meteorologist. It was just then that Parker and his mom parked their car at the local news station building. Parker was so excited to learn more about the water cycle with his mom. When they got out of the car, Parker and his mom were greeted by a man named Tom. Tom is the local news station's weatherman or meteorologist. "Hello there, my name is Tom, and I am the meteorologist here at News 8. I am the scientist who studies the Earth's atmosphere and determines the weather that we are going to have. Are you ready to learn about our Earth's weather and water cycle?" asked Tom. "Yes," said Parker as he smiled happily. "My name is Parker, and this is my mom." "Nice to meet you both," said Tom. "You and your mom can follow me this way and into the news station," said Tom. As we head into the station, we are going to talk about the water cycle. We know that the water we have on Earth is the only water we will ever have. The water that you drink is the same water that the woolly mammoths and King Tut drank many years ago. "The Earth has been recycling water for over 4 billion years, and that is a really long time," said Tom. "Well, that is a really long time," said Parker. "I learned about the water cycle in my first grade class. I know that water goes through a water cycle forever. And it starts with the water evaporating because the Earth is heating it up. Then the water turns into a vapor. That's a gas," said Parker. "And then condensation happens when the water vapor turns back into a liquid and makes a cloud. After that, there is precipitation, and that is when the water falls from the clouds," said Parker. "Good job," said Tom, "and that's part of my job, to predict how the water will fall from the clouds. It might be rain, snow, sleet, or hail," said Tom. "Do you know what happens next?" asked Tom. "Sure do," said Parker. "After precipitation, then there is collection. That is when the rain, snow, sleet, or hail collects in rivers, lakes, and oceans. Sometimes water doesn't always end up there, though. Sometimes it falls onto the ground like that puddle I saw this morning. And it will flow across the ground," said Parker. "Excellent job," said Tom. "That is called a surface runoff. Sometimes the water will soak into the soil, and then it will slowly move through the ground until eventually it reaches a river or the ocean," said Tom. "Then the cycle starts all over again," said Parker. But then Parker wondered again. If water goes through a cycle and we only have so much water on Earth, then how long does it take for that water to go through the water cycle? "That is an excellent question," said Tom. "Each stage of the water cycle is different, and our water can spend different amounts of time in each part," said Tom. "When water is in the atmosphere, it can be there for just about 9 days. And this is the shortest stay that the water has as it goes through its journey of the water cycle," said Tom. "When water comes to the ground through precipitation, it can stay in a few different places. We learned that it can fall to the ground and water can stay here for a month or two until it has time to slowly move to groundwater. If it goes to shallow groundwater, which is not as deep in the ground, it can stay here for 200 to 300 years. If it goes down into the ground, deep, deep down, the water can stay there for over 10,000 years. If the water comes down in precipitation and goes into the ocean, it could stay there for over 3,000 years until it is evaporated again," said Tom. "Wow, that's a really long time," said Parker. "It sure is," said Tom. "So it's important that we take care of our water on Earth, because it is the only water we will have, and all living things need water. The water cycle also helps with our weather patterns. Without precipitation, my job would be pretty easy sometimes," laughed Tom. "If our water didn't naturally recycle itself, we would run out of clean water, and we can't live without it," said Tom. "Wow, that is amazing! Thank you, Tom, for teaching me this important information," said Parker. "You are welcome, Parker. Keep being curious," said Tom. As Parker and his mom drove home that day, Parker told his mom the 4 parts of the water cycle: evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. He also told his mom that he was excited to share this new information that he learned with his classmates in school. He is going to make sure that everyone knows that our water can take a long time to come back again, so we have to make sure that we are using it responsibly.